So last week I entered the Community Game Jam. Now if you don't know what the Community Game Jam was, it was a game jam hosted by a bunch of game dev YouTubers. These game dev YouTubers included Blackthorn Prod, Danny, Saiku, Jabrils, and Brackies. At 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday, the theme was announced. The game is a liar. I started out by doing some brainstorming. The first idea that came to mind was a game where you would have abilities with cooldowns or restrictions, but there was nothing stopping you from using them anyway. The next idea I had was a game where hazards were safe and things that were safe were hazards. The last idea I had was one in the style of the Stanley Parable, in which there would be a narrator that would speak to you and tell you what to do, but you could just ignore them and do what you wanted, and there would be multiple endings to it. I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to go at in the start, so I just started out by making some simple platformer mechanics. I then added hazards and made the main character for the game. Around this time, I decided that I wanted to go with the narrator route, so I started planning out the story while I was doing this, but I don't want to spoil it here, so you'll just have to play the game to find out what happens. Sunday's development started with a simple dialogue system that would play a voice line and show some subtitles at the bottom of the screen. The game looked pretty boring in my opinion, so I decided to add some juice and decoration. I first started with adding some chains that would hang from the top, and then I added some dead trees that would sprout out of the ground and a new background that has slight gradient. I then added some dust effects for when the player walked and jumped, and some little white bugs that would fly around randomly. After this, I felt as though the game looked a lot nicer. I added some scene transitions before I took the rest of the night off. On Monday, I got into contact with Fartfish, who made the music for Sorcerer Shootout, and I had worked with him before on Bad Egg. He made some really nice ambient music for the game while I got to work on menu and a logo. I really liked how the menu and logo turned out, and I actually preferred the way that the trees looked in the logo, so I decided I would revamp them in-game. After that, I gave the menu some functionality, started recording more voice lines, and worked on a second level. I realized that I should probably put links to my and Fartfish's stuff in the menu, so I made some art for that and put it in-game. I was going to put the names and credits above it, but I got distracted with making enemies, so I would have to do that the next day. On Tuesday, I started by designing the third level, which would allow you to go against what the narrator says, as well as recorded some more voice lines. After I finished blocking out that level, I got to work on a better player death system, rather than just restarting the room. I made it so when you die, some particles would appear and a message would say press any key to respawn. In addition to this, I made it so you drop the mask you were wearing when you died. For most of the rest of the week, I just made levels, and during that time I realized that I wouldn't have enough time to actually make all the branching paths that I wanted to at first, so I decided I would go with just a solid linear story. Now, this was the last day of the jam. I only had 2 levels to make, so I went ahead and got to work. The final level was timed and it had a nice resolution to the whole overarching plot, and I thought it turned out pretty well. I'm actually really happy with the way it turned out. After I finished with that, I made an end screen and then realized I didn't have any sounds in the game. The only sound I thought would work well would be a death sound, so I made that and put it in the game. But after that, the game was basically done and I had about 2 hours left to finish, so I added some grass props and played through the entire game one more time before I submitted. Overall, I'm really happy with how the game turned out and I'd love it if you played it. I didn't get to add the branching story like I wanted to, but I think the linear story works really well. If you want to check out the game for yourself, then check out the link in the description. But that'll just about do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, let me know your feedback in the comments below, and subscribe if you want to see more. Bye!